Welcome. This is Construction Type Part 3. We're going to be looking, of course, utilizing the IBC code book, and we're using 2012. So we're going through and kind of diving in a little deeper on what we did the last time on Part 2. Okay, we've looked at the table on page 107 in your code book. Table 601, we've kind of gone through that, so make sure that you understand and you always read the side notes. If it has a B or a C, you read what it says down below, because a lot of times I want to point out, and if you look at including roof framing and decking, where part of the roof structure is 20 feet or more above the floor immediately below, the fire retardant treatment could be wood members shall be allowed to be used is really unprotected. So you could have an unprotected area. So I just want to make sure that you're understanding that. Okay, we looked at last time table 1018.1 in your book. That's quarters. So make sure you review that. Okay, I kind of want to start with a little bit of section 701. If you go into, and really the whole thing is chapter 7, talks about fire and smoke protection features. We're going to kind of go over all of this throughout the book, but if you look at section 707 in your book, it talks about fire barriers. And, you know, fire barriers are something that's a little bit, you kind of have to have an understanding of those, because it's very similar, of course, to fire partitions and stuff that you might see in here, or really what I refer to as fire walls, which you see in section 706, fire walls. So I want you to kind of understand a little bit about those and a little bit about the differences between that. Fire barriers, of course, are installed and used in the International Fire Code. And fire barriers have materials permitted by the building type of construction. Remember, we talked about type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, type 5. So within that, there are different ratings that you'll find. And so when it talks about it in through here, you need to read this whole section, because a lot of times it says the fire resistant rating of the fire barrier shall comply with this section. Shaft enclosures. The fire resistant rating of the fire barrier separating building areas from a shaft. A shaft, of course, is a vertical area like a laundry chute that could be, or a mail slot, or an elevator shaft that you can see, has to comply with 713.4. So if we go back and look at, in the code book, 713.4, let me get over here to point 4, turn the page. It talks about right here the shaft. It says shaft enclosure shall have a fire resistant rating of not less than 2 hours where connecting 4 stories or more. Basically, because what they're talking about, it could be an opening of stairs, or it could be a elevator shaft, any of those that we're looking at. So when 2 hours or more, we're connecting 4 stories or more, and not less than 1 hour, we're connecting less than 4 stories. The number of stories connected by the shaft enclosure shall include any basements, but not any mezzanines. A mezzanines is if we have one particular floor, like the first floor, and then you have a balcony or part of a floor that comes out. Shaft enclosure shall have a fire resistant rating not less than the floor assembly penetrated, but not to exceed 2 hours. Shaft enclosure shall meet the requirements of this section. So, you know, a lot of times you've got to go back and forth to be able to look at these. So let's go back to fire barriers, because I want you to kind of understand that, and it's real important to look at that. It says enclosures for exit access stair. It gives you the rating, and it's telling you to go to section 1009.3.1. This is where I want you to read through this particular section of the code book and flip back. Now, if you don't know what something is, it talks about an atrium or mezzanine. Remember, you can always go back to the very first of the book, because it gives you, if you go back in through here, an example or definitions of things. So, and if you can't find something, always remember, go to the back of the book to be able to see those. So it even talks about here incidental uses. Okay, the fire barrier separating incidental uses. We learned last time what incidental uses is from chapter 2 when we read and we got together. Shall have a fire resistant rating not less than that indicated in table 509. So that means we've got to go to table 509, and if we flip through here, and look at table 509. That's on page 104 in the 2012 IBC code book. You're going to see it says furnished rooms. If you have a furnished room where any piece of equipment has over 400,000 BTUs per hour, it has to have a 1 hour or provide an automatic sprinkler system. So we might see paint body shops, lavatories, laundry rooms, because sometimes you might have hotels that might have a laundry room in there. And the laundry room, of course, here, over 100 square feet, has to have 1 hour fire rating. That means the walls, the doors, everything that you're looking at is a 1 hour or provide an automatic sprinkler system. You're going to see the codes are moving more and more of having sprinkler systems everywhere. And that would solve a lot of problems. But a lot of times you will find that a lot of your clients don't want to spend the extra money for sprinkler systems. But sprinkler systems are required just about in all of buildings today. Waste and linen collection rooms located. It tells you here 1 hour. It tells you, or it doesn't have an or sprinkler system. It's saying you have to have this separation here. So, you know, that's something that you need to go back and look. So make sure that you look at all of these areas that you see in through here of fire barriers. Okay, exterior wall fire resistant ratings. They're based on fire separation distance. So a lot of times if you look at table 602, we go over here to table 602. This is the exterior rating, and if you look back, it's located, table right here, 602, page 108 in the IBC 2012. It's talking about the distance that you can have from one exterior wall that's fire rated to another one. So if you kind of look at this next particular period, it talks, let me get to exterior walls. You will see sometimes there are drawings that we might see. So what it's talking about here, the distance. And what it's measuring, of course, is the difference from the property line. You see PL, that's the property line, to the building. How far do you have to be from that particular building? Okay, exterior walls. A lot of times requirements are due to the type of construction and the fire separation distance that's applied to the exterior. Sometimes they're more restrictive. And I know you're going to ask, well, how do the downtown areas do it? Well, you know, that's where we're talking about a party wall, or we get into of course, a firewall, because what we're doing is separating, and that particular wall goes past the roof. So we're talking about where it comes up, and it will go past the wall. So let's say we have one building here, and it may have multiple stories downtown. And so what you're going to do is create a firewall that's going to protrude up, and the other building is going to be in here, and it's separating. Okay, that's what it's talking about, the separation that's there. And this wall has a particular distance that it has to go so that the fire can't jump over into the other building. All right, that's, of course, the distance that I was talking about. Let's go back to 706. You're going to learn a little bit about that because we want that firewall, of course, to go all the way from the foundation all the way through the roof, and we want to make sure that it's protecting that. Okay, that's just like the little drawing that I did for you. Fire resistance walls, you can look at table 706.4. It tells you what the ratings of those walls. So if I have assembly, business, education, residence, whatever it's saying, you've got to have a 3-hour there. But it says A, if it's a type 2 or 5 construction, the walls may be printed to have a 2-hour fire resistant ratings. So, of course, this is what it's talking about of your separation. So you've got to look at it. Okay, continuing on that, firewalls create the equivalent of separate buildings within a single structure. So we might end up having a building here, and we want to separate back to this little bitty drawing here, if I can get this focused a little bit. So we might end up creating a firewall horizontally or vertically, and this to be one building, and this may be another building. Why would I do something like that? Now that comes into the actual size, and we're going to be getting into how big a building, because sometimes you may have like Walmart or Target that ends up having a huge warehouse, and how do they separate those areas? Because we'll be talking about next is to the actual square footage a building can be. Okay, so I would like for you to make sure that you read, of course, all about firewalls, which is located at 706, and then read the section on 707 so that you will have a little bit better understanding. Now, I want to kind of talk one quick thing right to you. Is sometimes the NFPA, if you're having to look at something and someone's adopted that, and they talk about type 1, and they give you these numbers out behind it. What does that mean? Well, what that means is 332 is the number in parentheses. Okay, the first number, which you see right here, is 3. It means 3 hour pertains to the exterior load-bearing wall. The exterior load-bearing wall has to be a 3-hour rating. The second number, which you see, 332, the 3, means this second number has to have a 3-hour rating, including the frame, the columns, the girders. The structural component has to have that 3-hour rating. And then the third number represents the floor construction. So that means we have the number here, type 1, 332. 2 represents the floor construction. So I just kind of want you to understand, because sometimes the NFPA is using that. But it's amazing how it matches what you see in the IBC code. They work very closely together. All right, so to kind of summarize, ratings represent the length of time a material or a combination of materials must resist fire. Older buildings, remember, are difficult to determine without this clear information, difficult or impossible sometimes to classify. Limited combustible materials are defined as materials that do not meet the requirements of non-combustible materials because they do not have capacity to burn. So, hopefully this kind of clarifies some things, and if you've got questions, make sure you get with me.